I'd now like to introduce our final speaker in this stream. It's Anna Cochrane, a familiar face around these parts and one I'm very always happy to run into at these sorts of events. Anna is based on Isis Downs, which is a property at Isisford near Longreach here. She lives there with her husband Andrew, and she has been very proactive in managing early career staff as a major grazing property within the Consolidated Pastoral Company Group. So please welcome Anna Cochrane to give the final presentation in this stream for this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I really hope you're enjoying the Rangelands Conference. My name's Anna Cochrane. My husband and I manage a cattle station about 140 k's to the southeast of Longreach. In 2018, I began my Masters in Business Leadership with an applied research focus on leadership in the Australian pastoral industry. Today's presentation is looking at some of the changes we've made on Isis Downs to help us attract and retain younger generation staff. I hope you enjoy my presentation. When we moved to Isis Downs in 2017, we very quickly realised that the entry-level staff we were employing required a new approach to leadership and development. Traditionally, the pastoral industry employment structures have been very rigid. The leadership architecture has been constructed by experience and seniority. Technical experience rather than leadership skills underpins promotion. On large pastoral stations, there continues to be a mandated social order that clearly identifies a hierarchy from station manager through to our level 1 station hands. Historically, this hierarchy influenced acceptable behaviours. For example, in the 1920s to the 1940s, jackaroos and station hands on Isis were not permitted to talk directly to the station manager, and no staff member was ever allowed to address the station manager's wife. Whilst nowhere near as strict, the legacy of this social order has been slow to break down, and our leadership models have been slow to evolve. The younger generation that we now employ have very different preferences for organisational behaviour and communication compared to the structure, hierarchy, clear position divisions and boundaries of the past. My observation is that this is having adverse impacts on our industry's ability to attract and retain staff. There is pre-existing research that has observed some general generational differences that help me further understand why we need to change our leadership on stations. If you have a look at the boomer through to zoomer columns, you will see a shift between a preference for positional, autocratic leadership towards a preference for more participative, more relational and a coaching leadership style. These generations also have a preference for wanting to work in jobs with a purpose, jobs that allow multitasking, and they want to work for employers who give fast feedback and fast promotions. The biggest shift is that they want to work with our organisations and with our business rather than for our organisations and for our businesses. The newer generations have formed a significant contemporary challenge for us as leaders. How do we engage with generation that values purpose, timeliness, and flexibility? And further, how do we marry the core values of millennials and Zoomer generations with the traditional core values of station life in a way that encourages social enterprise and uses a coaching ethic rather than rigid hierarchical structures? In order to examine this dilemma, I applied a theoretical lens that looked at practical ways we could adapt the traditional controller leadership method to embrace an eco-leadership framework to increase attraction and retention of our staff. For those of you unfamiliar with the controller leadership and eco-leadership theories, I've outlined the paradigm shift. Eco-leadership recognises that all and any organisation is an ecosystem within an ecosystem where all parts are interrelated. To be high-performance employers, as managers, we need to create spaces where there are connections between people and the environment. Eco-leadership recognises that all staff are leaders and form part of a greater whole. It places at its core sustainable business models, social responsibility, and environmental sustainability. Viewing the emergent pastoral ecosystem of one of rapid change with wise technology adoption, a changing value set of the people we work with, and the need for flexibility in a traditionally structured industry, I identified 3 key assumptions that are perpetuating the reduction in numbers of staff attracted to the pastoral industry. The first one is that traditional control leadership models are not sustainable. Since January 2017, my husband and I, as station managers, have started to consciously change the way in which we lead and manage our team to arrest the high turnover of staff and the predominant use of contractors. In 2019, I established 5 interventions with a broad view to creating a different culture, to create a focus on process and to provide spaces in our organisation to allow all our staff to flourish. Our second assumption and desired behaviour change was that our leadership structures need to adapt in order to attract and retain staff. We also need to change our workplace models to ensure that we stay relevant in the jobs market. There are 4 qualities that underpin eco-leadership theory, and the desired changes that we identified were closely aligned to connectivity and interdependence, systemic ethics, leadership spirit, and organisational belonging. The first action was modifying our recruitment process. The recruitment process for 3 new staff in 2019 was deliberate, paced, and creative. A gap analysis was undertaken regarding what skills the station required, what support our existing staff would value, and the best process to use in our recruitment strategy based on our learnings from the previous year. I examined what we knew about the younger and millennial and Zoomer generations in terms of communication preferences and their use of technology. We looked awry at our language bias predominantly and advertised our positions using words that focused on purpose, value, and impact. Station hands wanted were replaced with look after the land, feed others, become family. Finding the right words to use to attract younger people and honour the changing environment of our station workforce was challenging. The words had to strike a balance between creativity, connectedness, and authenticity. In mid-2019, we appointed 3 new staff, including a station cook, within 24 hours from a record number of 15 applications. Our finding was that marrying the recruitment process with the identified communication preferences and articulating the role from an eco-leadership perspective certainly increased the quantity and the quality of the applicants compared to previous seasons. Our second intervention focused on systemic ethics and highlighted the broader purpose of CPC and ISIS Downs. Our CEO gave a face-to-face presentation in January 2019, at which he shared the fact that CPC employs 600 staff in Indonesia and consciously chooses not to invest in mechanisation so that the traditional methods of farming and harvesting continue to benefit and feed up to 1,200 Indonesian families. The costs are the same, but the social benefits outweigh the mechanisation efficiencies. We also lease land from the Twin Hills Aboriginal Corporation in the Territory that provides jobs and leadership responsibilities back into the Indigenous workforce, and a biodiversity project working with the traditional owners to minimise the footprint of cattle on the landscape. There was a focus put on articulating what we do daily on ISIS Downs and how, as a company, we influence others' systems and people. In the evaluation process, 3 staff reported that they felt connected to others. 2 of them felt proud that CPC made active choices with a social justice focus. This particular intervention gave our team the space to consider how our whole business model impacts the social, technical, and environmental system in which it operates, which gave our staff a renewed sense of pride. The third intervention was a conscious choice to run leadership at every level days, where the senior members of the team absent themselves from the station. I literally walk into the kitchen of a morning and tell the rest of the staff that the station manager and the assistant manager are effectively dead for the day, and the staff have to organise themselves. The staff mobilised, and the two longest serving staff planned the day for the other staff, despite one of them not being in a position of seniority. These two invited ideas from other staff members and asked for mutual agreement to complete tasks. Some of the more inexperienced staff openly questioned some of the arbitrary instructions. For example, why were we mustering a paddock in a certain way or in a certain direction? And alternatives were genuinely considered. Whilst there was due consideration given to the day's task from a management perspective regarding risk and workplace health and safety, the day went very well. The staff felt empowered, relationships were strengthened through the process of shared responsibility and risk management. The ethic was one of working together to tackle any challenge the day brought with it. The manager and the assistant manager were very uncomfortable with this process initially, and it forced them to ensure that their risk management and their workplace health and safety processes were robust. But essentially, it helped them consider failure, injury, or time delays in their work plan, which was a good leadership lesson in itself. There were 2 evaluations undertaken. Generally, the team said that sharing the leadership throughout the day made them think harder about why they were doing what they were doing and question if there were better ways of doing it. They thought that they were more considerate of others in the team in the absence of the station management. And interestingly, the greatest challenge reported by the team was making sure that they were doing the job in a way that the manager would be proud of. This leadership at every level day is something we still do about every 6 months, and it has encouraged us to become enablers rather than managers, and the station hands to become leaders. The biggest learning from this intervention was that recognising that there are different roles in leadership. Leaders can question, can guide, be silent or passive just as easily as they can be outspoken or inspirational. The final intervention focused on developing organisational belonging. We initiated a personality and communication profiling day, as well as consciously trying to build our diversity in our team. The first action was to profile communication styles as a group and learn about the different language that motivates different people. The group answered a series of statements and arrived at a natural behavioural style profile. We each described our preferred communications and acknowledged the energy it takes to move out of our natural communication position to a foreign position to influence a relationship or an outcome with others. We also explicitly challenged the status quo in the diverse makeup of our team. In the recruitment process, we reflected on the current composition of our team at ISIS. At the time, we had an openly homosexual station hand, an Indigenous cook, 2 stereotypical stockmen, a 17-year-old female stock hand, a qualified accountant looking for a career change, and a New Zealander. The homogenous factor that we identified was that everybody was under the age of 40. The benefit of experience was missing. Challenging ourselves to be more diverse was really tough. This is one that we failed that year, and we retreated to what we know. We employed all young new recruits. The realisation was that we should identify similar values rather than look at age, interest, or social preferences. Both interventions were sound learnings in creating positivity around different perspectives. Essentially, through this research, I wanted to create a more intentional leadership. I started out wanting to become a better leader, but it evolved into creating a better space and community through language, context, environment, diversity, and community. There are certainly challenges. We still operate with a competency-based merit program. We're in a high-risk industry, and there is a lack of targeted leadership education in the pastoral sector. From the research on ISIS Downs, the learning is that we face a moral imperative that a new generation of land and animal stewards require the pastoral industry to lead differently. Thank you very much for your time.